This episode of Gators Breakdown is brought to you by MyBookie. Use promo code Gators to double your first deposit only at mybookie.ag. This episode of Gators Breakdown is also brought to you by Shark Coatings. Visit sharkfloorcoatings.com when you need professional floor coating services done right the first time.
Want more Gators Breakdown? Join Gators Breakdown Plus. Starting at $3 a month. Get access to unique episodes, plus a blog, chat room, giveaways, shoutouts, and more. Gators Breakdown Plus is furthering the interaction with fans and listeners like you. Head to gatorsbreakdown.supportingcast.fm to join Gators Breakdown Plus today. Gators Breakdown. Because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. Coming at you. Instant reaction from the Gators' victory 52-17 over Eastern Washington. Going to do it a little bit different this time. With the game being on Sunday, trying to catch back up with everything. Going to do kind of a normal game review, but not as in-depth, of course, because I'm coming at you right after the game. So, of course, no rewatch, no really diving into stats too much. They were having problems with the stats anyway during this game, but Florida did what they were supposed to do for the most part in the 52-17 victory over Eastern Washington. So, you know, it's a lot of people are going back to the Samford game last year. So you were definitely putting up points on offense, much like that game. But the defense, while giving up some yards, gave up some late points as well. It got off to a bad start. We'll get into all that. But, you know, was not the getaway it was versus Samford last year. So plenty to get into. We're going to do something different too. As the Gators Breakdown Plus members, I did this a lot last year with all the night games. Haven't been able to do so this year, but part of the instant reaction has been to bring the Discord chat in for the reaction. So I'm going to do that as well. Gators Breakdown Plus members on the Discord will be able to take part in this to kind of keep the conversation going here with this game. You know, kind of a game that the interest wasn't a whole lot because of the opponent. But there are things we wanted to see. We got to see, and things that we thought needed improvement coming into this game that still need improvement for the Gators. We'll get into it all right here. So I'm going to make sure I bring the chat in now so they can hear all the stat reads here, of course, and guys in the chat should be there now. I'll bring them up, but they should be able to hear me now on the Discord. So, yeah, let's take a look at some of the stats for the Gators and having to go around to different services there. The official stats did not work for Florida, so I had to go around and search. The Athletic putting up some stats. CBS was able to keep up with the game as well. But just overall look, 663 yards for the Gators offense to 423 for Eastern Washington. 423. You did hear that right. And the worry we had about this defense kind of still, you know, even though Eastern Washington only had 3 points for the rest of the game, they were still moving up and down the field, still gaining yards there. Even Billy Eckery even did say it kind of going into halftime, it was bend, don't break there. But, you know, Florida needed to break Eastern Washington's offense. It just didn't do it. 423 yards for Eastern Washington. How do you want to take it? That is up to you. I'm not going to try and talk you into it one way or another there about how you feel about that defensive performance from Florida. But when you just kind of look at where Florida was at, and look, this episode, as I said, kind of different. I am kind of flying on the seat of my pants here, just trying to bring you this episode instant reaction form here. But I did go back and look at Eastern Washington. I'm bringing it up here. They were averaging 336 yards coming into this game. So, of course, 336 average coming into the game. They gained 423. So over the average they're given up by this Florida defense. And if you look at them playing Oregon earlier this year, They gained 187 yards total against Oregon. They had 87 yards passing and 100 yards rushing versus Oregon. And they gained 423 total on Florida, 261 through the air, 162 on the ground. Eastern Washington had 26 first downs on Florida's 21. So a couple of ways to go about that too. I mean, we know Florida's offense could pretty much do whatever they wanted to do in the first half. Scored on the bomb, the very first play, the 75-yard touchdown to Justin Shorter from Anthony Richardson. A good pass, by the way, because we've seen him miss those. He has a guy open down the field, overthrows him by about 2 or 3 yards, and just not completing that downfield pass. We saw it here. So good start to Anthony Richardson building on that Tennessee performance last week, and totaling that 663 yards for the Gators, 393 through the air with AR and Kitna. 270 yards on the ground for the Gators. Only 21 first downs, as I mentioned, compared to 26 for Eastern Washington. 1 turnover for the Gators. The inexplicable pass by Anthony Richardson to come out at halftime. Something you definitely didn't want to see. Hopefully something he could continue on from last week. But just, I mean, look, he was coming out of the locker room at halftime saying, all right, I'm going to throw this ball deep. It didn't matter what coverage Eastern Washington was showing. He had guys wide open down, shorter of the field, shorter distance, of course, and he had in his mind made up, coming out of the locker room pretty much, that I don't care what play it is, we're going deep. Throws it into triple, quadruple coverage there. So pretty much the only big mistake there by Anthony Richardson, of course. You don't want to see that, but really no harm, no foul. Pretty much, to the way he played the rest of the game. 36-29 time of possession for Eastern Washington. That opening drive, they just drove down the field on the Gators, taking up, I think it was close to 7 minutes on that first drive there on this Florida defense, and missed tackles early for this Florida defense. So, granted, I think holistic, the big picture there for the defense, 17 points, okay. Garbage time touchdowns, that's part of it at the same time. Held him to 3 most of the time, but you still didn't want to see the missed tackles, some of the missed coverages. That's still going to rear its head. And when you start critiquing and looking at this defense, kind of what showed up there. So before we get into specific stats in here, let me bring, let's see, the Discord chat in. You guys are up now, so hopefully you guys hear me, and I'm just not talking to a wall here. But what's up, Discord, Gators Breakdown Plus chat members?
Hey, Dave.
Yeah, what's up, Bull Gator? You were Bull had been the first one in there, too. So, Bull, let me get your instant reaction for the Gators' 52-17 victory.
I think this game reinforced that there's no such thing as an easy victory this season. Our defense is just too unreliable. But I got to say, the number one thing I'm going to take away from this game is the Richard Garage meme, which I will be using for years to come.
I think Gator fans will be using that one a whole lot. Shout out to Soderquist there, David Soderquist, for hopping on that one pretty quick. He had the gift ready to go pretty much for the Richard Garage hip shake. I guess that's what we'll call it. But good stuff. At least we get the meme out of this game. But like I said, with this kind of opponent, it's up to you how much you want. I mean, at least this game was easy, Bull Gator, going to your point. I think it does, like as you said, looking at this defense, it probably does shed light moving forward. And look, I don't know if this game would have really changed our mind one way or the other anyway, but looking forward, no game, Florida's just going to have to outscore opponents.
Yeah, there's no question about it. I think maybe another thing I should have brought up before I jump too much on the defense is Kitna did all right.
Yeah.
Now, granted, he had a lot of time, and Missouri's not going to be so accommodating with against our offensive line, but still, he completed passes and he was competent. He was confident. That's good. That gave me hope. But with Miller still being a question mark at this point.
Yeah, I think, and I put it out there, of course, in the Discord during the game and on Twitter. I enjoyed seeing him just have that confidence out there because Eastern Washington did put some pressure in his face, but he knew right away where he wanted to go with the ball. And he was pushing the ball down the field at the same time. Going to the quarterback stats here, 10 of 13 for Jalen Kitna, 208 yards, averaging 16 yards there, and 1 touchdown, of course, a 236.7 rating. Anthony Richardson, 6 of 9, 185 yards, 20.6 yard average, of course, 2 touchdowns, the 1 interception. But yeah, the quarterbacks having a good day pretty much did what they wanted to for the most part with this passing attack.
Yeah. I don't know if somebody else wants to say something, but before I give it up, just I think, Dave, you and I were commenting during the game that the defensive line against a much smaller offensive line was getting very little push. And, our linebackers are our linebackers. So we need the defensive line to really get to the quarterback, to hurry the quarterback and disrupt the run. And that was possibly, if I could say anything that was most disappointing, that was it.
That was my biggest disappointment. I was ready. And Britton Cox played a good game. And then, of course, he rested in the second half. But we're mainly talking about, the middle of the defensive line, even the ends at points. It did get better as the game progressed, but man, once again, Jervon Dexter just almost invisible. Had one really good play that stood out, but invisible there for the most part. It's just the guys you expect to have impacts, even, given the opponent here. Okay, well, maybe they'll struggle, especially for somebody like Dexter. He's been double teamed, triple teamed. But even against Eastern Washington, if they tried that, you still look for a better performance, and we just didn't get it. And it's really it's more worrisome because it's just a continuation of what we've seen. If there was one game he was going to go out there and break out, it was probably going to be, or we were looking at this one, maybe targeting this one, but it was much of the same. And that's the issue. It's just things you thought Florida could improve on defense still didn't happen. And it starts up front.
Yeah, and just continues all the way back, right?
Yeah.
And that's the main thing. It's just, I said this before, but it just feels like there's no level 1, 2, and 3. It's just get through the first possible gap, and then you get 20 yards. And with a team like this, you just don't want to see that. It's just concerning. But to try to get on a positive take from mine, because I was coming in this game. What do you want in a game like this? It's a weird thing. It got moved by a day. It's at noon. The crowd is I don't know. It is going to be what it is. So I'm looking more towards the future of the staff and personnel and whatnot. And I took a lot of positive things away. We got to see, obviously Kitten, as you've already talked about, the fact that he actually has a higher QBR than AR is awesome. I thought his confidence in the pocket and,
No, QBR was actually 290 Richardson, 236 for Kitna. So.
Oh, was it? Okay, yep. Sorry. The stat line I'm looking at is, I think.
Well, as I said, and we should know that's probably good. Like I said, I clear that up one more time. The stats may be everywhere because, as I said, the official stats were not working during the game, and CBS. Like I said, I'm looking at them too, but. The Athletic has some stats as well. That's kind of where I was going at the same time. So yeah, who knows?
Yeah, but your stats are still showing 10 for 13 and 208 yards with making that a 77%. That's and a lot of those passes were legit. It wasn't there was no joke about it. There weren't these easy little drop offs most of the time or anything. Although he did do one swing pass it had the right speed. I thought it had the right trajectory and it got there. It just in that case, who was it? Reynolds didn't hold his block, I think. Anyway,
screen, and I made sure I messaged Will. He hit a check down. That was a very positive play for the Gators.
That's true. You're right. And again, that was one of the things too on that when AR's interception, he had a check down. Literally a guy just staying. I think it was it Pearsall that was actually the check on that one, which is strange for his position, but. I don't know what his thing is with checkdowns. He could go learn a little bit from EJ about checkdowns, right?
The check down for sure. Like I said, I just think he had it in his mind. It didn't matter what coverage Eastern Washington was showing. It didn't matter if he had 5 guys wide open underneath. He was going deep no matter what. Now, don't get me wrong. It's still the wrong decision. I'm not trying to excuse it. I'm just saying that's exactly what happened.
Right. Yeah, I hear you. On the other positives. I thought that we saw something from, it feels like maybe this is now the trend. Maybe the team will be on because this is the kind of game where you can come out and just lay an egg. And the defense is going to do that anyways, but the offense did not. They came out and they played a real game. The team seemed composed. They seemed, the coach was adapting, and I thought the play calling really was just smart for what it was. They saw what they could do. And obviously it's an easy game to call, kind of, but you can always screw it up. We know that. So there was a lot to get on that. And on the defensive side, I will say the positives I take away is the young guys that got on the field excited me. I mean, you said the way that Dexter is just not impactful is so disappointing. I don't know what else to say about it. Like, I just watch him, and we always say he gets double team or triple team. Well, he didn't this game sometimes, particularly when McClellan was out there. And I watched him just kind of bump against one inside guard, and you're just going, where's the guy we expected out of you? It's I don't even know. It's weird. It just feels disappointing.
It's definitely disappointing because like we knew coming in that we circled him as the guy that we could at least count on up front, and we're not getting that.
Yep. No. And obviously, I don't know, Watson. What exactly he's taken up space. Obviously, I think he's doing great for what he is. Sometimes he like tries to get too, like he'll do a spin move or something, which is crazy for his size to see, but it also takes him out of the play, which I've noticed that a couple of times with him. So I'm not, I think he's something we need right now, but he probably isn't the ideal one. McClellan is exciting though. That dude is he's usually outside a little bit, and you can just see him pushing guys in. And I think he's only going to, obviously he'll get better. Other one too is Mitchell, and
there you go.
And Moore got on the field.
Yeah, Miguel Mitchell was there early too. Number 10. If you remember number 10, if you had to go look at a roster to figure out who that was, it was Miguel Mitchell. And partly because Trey Dean did not play this game, and he was out there early, and he flashed a couple times. He forced a fumble early in the game as well. So he was credited for 2 tackles here, according to these stats. So if anybody else has anything different, like I said, stats are off, maybe. But yeah, he was flashing and impactful early. Ventrell Miller led the way, 6 tackles. He didn't play much, of course, especially as the game went on. Second half, he had 6 tackles. He was impactful early, even though Eastern Washington was moving the ball. Brenton Cox, of course, early as well with 2 tackles. DeJuan Black comes in later in the game, 3 tackles, some up and some down, got injured, so we'll see. Kamari Wilson with 3, Rashad Torrance with 3, Amari Burney with 2, and a sack. So Burney continuing getting some sack numbers there this year. And we saw Wingo. We saw a whole lot of young guys. So that's where part of this, that's what these games are for. Like I said, I can't tell you, I can't talk you into taking how this game should have went with a bunch of young faces. That's just kind of up for you to decide how you want to take it. But there's going to be some good, there's going to be some bad. And look, we know Florida's not all that deep anyway. When they start going down here, we wanted to see the young players. We saw the young players. We saw some ups. We saw some downs. Kind of the nature of the beast right now.
Right. And to go back to like the future prospect, seeing guys like Caleb Douglas and Miguel Mitchell, who are relatively low-rated prospects, come out and actually perform at a level that is clearly competitive in the SEC, that gives me a lot of confidence that the evaluations our coaches were doing, obviously in the last cycle in a very compressed time frame, under a lot of stress, they have picked so many winners, it seems like. I mean, everyone that was at the top of their class is already performing. I mean, Shamar James, Kamari Wilson. I mean, McClellan, obviously he was already attached, so it's a little bit different, but that I love. I love seeing our guys come out. I mean, if you took the TAMU crew, 8 5-stars and everyone down, I mean, I know I'm mocking it a little bit, but Evan Stewart dropped a couple passes yesterday. You're just looking at him going like, well, maybe our coaches are either better at coaching or evaluation. I'm not saying Evan Stewart's bad, but you know what I mean? It gives me confidence that they're picking the right guys for the future. So when we say something like when they get their guys in, it actually means something. Where with Dan, it was like, what does that even mean? He just takes the leftovers with the highest rating he can get, basically. So, all right, I'll get off my box here.
Oh, good. 13 guys with catches today. Of course, you had the 75-yarder from Justin Shorter. That was his only catch of the game. Dejon Reynolds, 2 catches, 74 yards, 54-yard long. Caleb Douglas was targeted 3 times. He had 1 catch, 62 yards, of course, a touchdown from him as well. Zipperer still coming along very nice. 3 good games in a row for him now. 2 catches, 48 yards, along with 27. Xavier Henderson, 2 for 39. Whittemore with a nice catch, 1 for 23. Pearsall, 1 for 22. Pearsall also had that nice run. And what have we been seeing and saying? Hey, we need somebody else on those jet sweeps from the wide receiver position. We got it this time with Ricky Pearsall. It goes the distance for a touchdown. But Jackson with a catch, 1 for 20, of course. Lingard, Wright, running backs getting involved. ETN with a catch as well. So all 3 of your main backs, or 3 of your backs, Lingard, Wright, ETN, and Montreal Johnson. Yeah, all 4 of those guys had 1 catch. Lingard with 15, Wright with 14, ETN, Johnson not much on their catches. And then Pouncey with a reception as well, as I mentioned. 13 Gators with a reception. So, of course, you expect to see that in a game like this. You go down the depth chart, guys getting some more carries or more playing time leading to that. You go down the depth chart when you start building the big lead. As far as rushing goes, as I mentioned, Pearsall, 76-yard carry for a touchdown. Anthony Richardson, the one scramble, 45 yards for him. Lingard, 5 attempts, 44 yards. I know everybody's kind of been waiting to see Lorenzo Lingard. It was probably going to be a game like this. We were hoping a couple weeks ago versus USF, or maybe even some of the other games. I know other people have been looking for more Lingard, but USF didn't get that opportunity a couple weeks ago. Gators not taking advantage of an easier opponent there. Taking advantage this time, Lorenzo Lingard, 5 carries, 44 yards, and a touchdown. Let's see. Battle, of course, comes in to JUCO transfer, 2 carries, 31 yards late. Wright, 7 attempts, 28 yards, and a touchdown. Montrell Johnson, 5 carries, 24 yards. ETN, 3 carries, 17 yards. There you go. So, kind of your stat rundown one more time: 663 yards for the Gators, 270 on the ground, 393 through the air. Eastern Washington, 423 total yards, 162 on the ground, 261 through the air. Anybody in the chat?
Well, I mean, those numbers are great, but I remember thinking at the very beginning, I don't know if you remember the first play where Anthony Richardson ran.
Yeah.
He was so much bigger than the defenders who were trying to tackle him. It was like varsity versus the Pee Wee League. And I just have a feeling that somebody, either it was AR himself or one of the coaches, said, listen, you can run all these guys all day long. Let's see what we can do through the air, because the linebackers were coming up to his shoulders.
Yeah, you could definitely.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You remember that little CB running after Shorter on the first play? I mean, that was hilarious.
Yeah, because it was kind of an uninspiring start, for the defense, what we saw there, but held Eastern Washington to a field goal. Just the missed tackles coming out. You wanted to see a little more fire there. We didn't get it up front, didn't get it in tackling either. Cox had those 2 big tackles for loss there. But it was complete opposite for the offense. I really love coming out with the 75-yard post. That was a bomb there. Mentioned this player. These plays have been there before, but not hit. And then look, it was at the end of the first quarter. Florida had 5 offensive plays and 2 touchdowns. Just kind of let you know how this game was going to go for Florida. We saw what we wanted and needed on offense, some big plays in the pass game and the run game. So if there was a game and an opponent you were definitely going to hit explosives on, this is the one you needed to.
Yeah, so we went out there and actually did what we should on one side of the ball.
Yeah,
we represented as the expectations would tell. So, you can always couch it with, well, they're Eastern Washington. Well, okay, but we did what we should do against Eastern Washington, I think. So
I've said it too many times. One of my favorite phrases: teams don't get enough credit for doing what they're supposed to do. But we didn't do that a couple weeks ago versus USF. We have seen what that team is before Florida and after Florida. I think we can safely say Florida did not do what they were supposed to do a couple of weeks ago. You did this time. How far you want to take it, that is up to you. I'm not telling you it's some big victory for Florida, so don't take it out of context. But you did what you were supposed to do for the most part. If I put a label or barometer on that, say 75% because of the defense not doing their job completely. But that's about where I am with this game.
Yeah, now I think
jump in. Okay.
I'm sorry. Somebody else is talking. Go ahead.
Oh no, but I was actually asking if anyone wants to jump in because I still have more stuff to say, but I don't want to.
All right, hey, well, let's go there. Okay, good. Let me stop there and let me get these ad reads in, and then we'll hop on back to the other side there to get some more of this chat going. So another angle I want to go to with this because of what happened in college football in the SEC yesterday. But before we get there, football, and you pick winners all the time, so why not get paid for them at MyBookie? Bet single game spreads, money lines, or parlay multiple together to increase your payouts. Low contest entry fees and over $500,000 to be won. Make it so you don't have to be a pro gambler to have some fun. Getting started is easy. Just visit mybookie.ag. Use promo code Gators on your first deposit to secure a double deposit bonus. That's promo code Gators to get your first deposit matched dollar for dollar all the way up to $1,000. MyBookie is a proven sports book that makes it simpler to bet and win. So make this your winning season exclusively at MyBookie. And now here's a message from our friends at Shark Coatings.
You know the goosebumps you get when Florida takes the field? Or when that 63-yard Hail Mary actually works? Or the thrill of a game-winning interception in the end zone? What a rush! You can experience that same rush every day at your home with Shark Coatings. We'll cover your old, ugly concrete with a beautiful industrial concrete coating and a warranty that lasts longer than most careers in professional football. So whether your garage floor is for parking, partying, or working out, Shark Coatings can transform it. And if your pool deck is starting to look like a bulldog, old, cracked, and smells like pee, Shark Coatings can transform that too. Shark Coatings is easy to clean, stain resistant, and is 100% antibacterial and antimicrobial. We're easy on the eyes and on the maintenance. Gator Nation is worldwide, and Shark Coatings is based right in the heart of it. So whether you live in Brunswick, Georgia, or Live Oak, Florida, down to Ocala, over to New Smyrna Beach, or anywhere in between, contact us for a free estimate today. Learn more at sharkfloorcoatings.com. That's sharkfloorcoatings.com.
All right, back here again, chatting it up with Gators Breakdown Plus members. After Florida's 52-17 victory over Eastern Washington, who wants to go first? Go ahead and get your thoughts in there.
Well, I forgot my train of thought, but talking about my bookie,
Yeah.
I just saw that UT opened as only a 3.5 favorite at LSU. If they do matching, that might be the one to bet on.
Man, that is 3.5. Okay, there we go. Tennessee.
Wow.
I can see that.
Now, actually, what I was going to say before about the defense was, I think you said it right when you said it was an effort thing. And if that's what I saw, and I hate to, jump into a kid's head because I'm not out there,
Right, it's tough, yeah.
busting my butt, whereas they are. But it just didn't look like they were motivated.
And I hope that's the case, Bull, but I think it goes back to, just kind of what we have seen so far from this defense this year, and that's probably the worry. It's either way, it's a worry because you'd hope you could get up for a game. And I know it's a Sunday and it's weird, but, we've just seen this defense not live up to any high expectation maybe some had out there, and maybe not to a certain level of play certain people had out there, and not even close to it. So I think that, kind of a continuation from the first 4 games of the season is probably where the worry comes in.
Yeah, and also we saw two sides of the ball. One of them seemed motivated, and the other one just was floundering around. And it's not like the offense hasn't struggled. I mean, I could understand the defense is up in their head because, they know as much as better than any of us how bad they're doing, right? I mean, they see it. I think most of them, if they're not delusional. So, yeah, running out there is weird and everything, but somehow the offense managed to come out there composed and do their job. So I don't know how to reconcile that. Obviously, if we had some inside information, maybe we could do it. But other than that, I don't know what's going on with some of those guys. I mean, you would think for Dexter, this is his money year, right? So shouldn't he put it all out there?
Yep.
It just doesn't look like he is.
Right. And I think, some of it too is there was a lot of talk this week coming off the Tennessee game about how bad this defense is. What are the issues? What are the problems? And we've always fell back on recruiting a bit, but not just stars and anything like that. But now I think it's really apparent what Florida has on that side of the ball. It's a bunch of tweeners up front, guys playing out of position up front because that's just the way the recruiting went. No true linebackers, and veterans back there on the back end that just didn't live up to expectations. And now you're having to rely on some young guys, learn on the job, learn on the fly. It's just, it's a bad combo right now. And you still thought even against an opponent like this, that shouldn't come into play so much and that shouldn't matter so much. And that's why, and it probably did it. There's just some issues on this defense. I can't sit here and say Eastern Washington ran up and down Florida's defense on this field because there's a bunch of tweeners and there's no true linebackers and they're learning on the back end. You still out-talent this team, or you should. No, in SEC play, yeah, Florida's in trouble with all the tweeners and their true linebackers and the youth that you kind of now want to see on the back end. But I mean, even for guys, I mentioned Dexter up front. Marshall didn't look too hot today either. Getting beat by double moves and stuff. I mean, what are we going to see when the SEC play ramps up? I mean, so it's not. I didn't mean to single Dexter out, but it's just been one coming into the season. He was labeled as he's the number one player on defense. He's the best player on defense. He's going to be schemed against. He's going to be double teamed. He's going to be triple teamed. And we haven't saw it. Marshall was another player that really good freshman season. We're looking for him to take that jump, and I don't necessarily think we've seen that jump. And against Eastern Washington, he's out there struggling at the same time.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I said disappointed when I talked about Dexter, because obviously I'm rooting for all the guys, but him specifically. Like he's his leader. He's done nothing but speak highly. He's represented the university exceptionally well, and I just don't know what's going on because he doesn't seem to be doing what he seems capable of. But some of the other guys, I mean, again, like going back to McClellan, like I thought that he's a presence already, and in his position as a true freshman, I think that's one of the hardest ones to come out there and play. Yeah, the one thing I did want to get out, if anyone wants to jump after this, is so I'm one of the like unabashedly big rooting for Lorenzo Wingard guys. Like he's just one of those guys that every time I hear an interview with him, everything he puts out on social media, he just seems all Gator and he just wants to get out there. I remember when Napier got hired, it was like the day after. He's like, "Can I help move you in?" I thought that was just, it shows his desire, and to see him he got 5 carries and a reception, and I think the third quarter, fourth quarter split between that. And I thought there's something up with why he's not getting yards. But then you go like, well, it's not like we don't have good running backs. So like the coaches are maybe picking the right one. But then you see him put his foot in the ground and just slam through the gap that the offense makes. And you're like, he's 7 yards downfield before he gets a hand on him. And you're like, why isn't this guy running? And
we've seen that before, that when he very, very little that he does get a carry, he does look different. He does look faster out there. I mean, and I agree, it is hard to figure out. I have not been told anything of why he's not out there. I mean, of course, as you said, Etienne's playing good, Johnson's playing good, Wright is out there for experience. I thought he played really well versus Tennessee last week as far as helping AR with the checks and the calls and knowing when to pass block and pass block there. So I know a lot of people will point to Wright and Lingard and the comparison there of why we maybe don't see Lingard more. Like I said, I haven't heard anything. I know the staff really likes what Wright brings to the table, and it's not like this run game, for the most part, in Tennessee they did struggle last week, but for the most part the season hasn't been there. It's been kind of really hard to complain about what we've seen from the run game, but maybe that is one of the mysteries so far this year. What is Lorenzo Lingard not doing? What is he missing that he's not getting out? His first appearance this season coming in Game 5.
Right, and I thought maybe it was something to do with the scheme change, that he was struggling with zone.
Yeah.
But today, I definitely is probably more of a natural sort of power scheme runner. But today, again, he put his foot in the ground when there was a gap, and he made the right cut most every time. So I don't know. I'd love to know more about that. The other one is DeJuan Black. Obviously, I hope everyone roots for that kid. Like the way he's always been all Gator. And then you just see the athleticism from time to time. But, there was one play today where he got behind the line, actually ran past the running back. I think Bull Gator, you commented on this. I think you saw this one. And then went, hold on, where is he? And turned around and then tackled him. So he still got the tackle, but he actually ran himself out of the play for a second.
Yep.
And you're going like, man, if he could just get it all together, I think he'd be phenomenal. I mean,
because he was involved. He was involved in the play before, and like he had got dinged up a little bit, and then he just rushes in there. He's in the backfield, very fast, as you said. Kind of just runs by the play. Then even kind of gives up a little bit, turns around, the play kind of comes back to him anyway.
Right. Yeah, it looked like he was a little woozy from the play before. I don't know exactly what you're talking about. I did comment on that.
That was a funny one.
That was a good fun, good discussion we were having in the Discord today. So if you have not joined Gators Breakdown Plus yet, we've had some good conversation in there. I've kind of went away from Twitter a little bit more the last couple of weeks and more focused in there a bit. So
Yeah, you're putting out so much good content. I mean, you can only do so much, right? And
I try.
we appreciate all you do for the Discord.
Less aggravation on the Discord than on Twitter. One thing I wanted to respond about Lingard, and I have to go back and watch the tape before I demean anybody, but at least one instance he did miss a block. And I think that may be the reason he's off the field is that, what's his name? Montrell and Naquan are so good at blocking that I think that may be why they're ahead of him.
Yeah, like it has to be something like that. Like, I think he is a good pure running back. Get the ball in his hands and go. It has to be more of knowing the offense, knowing the checks, knowing the block, or how to block at the same time. I mean, it has to be something like that.
But then ETN, I mean, he's definitely not as phenomenal as a blocker, but he holds his own in there.
Yeah,
so, and
he does.
Obviously, true freshman. So let's go.
He is a surprise. I didn't expect him to be this good this fast.
Absolutely, totally. It's so much fun to watch him run. Oh, but on that point though, when ETN, he had 2 plays this time, right, where he gets the ball. Was it him? Right? It was at least one of him where he got the ball out in the flat. He had another yard to go, but he does a little shake instead of going north and south and to get that first down.
Yeah, all he had to do. Montrell did the same on the drive before, I think. Yeah, it was either get the ball. Right. Yeah, get the ball in your hand, move north south. For ETN, it was if he runs to the sideline, he gets the first down.
That's right. But a guy like LL, I'm reasonably confident he gets north and south because that seems to be the way he goes.
And big enough to run over someone.
Yes, for sure.
What were
pull trucks?
Right.
Run over someone.
Pull trucks versus ducks. Exactly right. Now, the one thing I was also thinking about as we look at the defense for the rest of the year, one of the things we've struggled with is quarterbacks. I think Rising and what's the guy? Hunt from Tennessee, the quarterback from Tennessee. I can't see anybody that we're going to be facing for the rest of the year unless you call the Georgia's Heisman candidate.
Stetson can move. He can hurt Florida enough there.
He can, and the guy from Florida State is coming out of his shell. But still, I mean, Georgia, I don't look as a W. But of the teams that I think we're going to be in it with, Vanderbilt, South Carolina, definitely not Texas A&M, definitely not LSU, and pretty much not Missouri. None of them are going to have quarterbacks like Hooker and Rising.
Yeah, Daniels for LSU can move, but I agree. And for Hooker was different because he's a bigger body at the same time. There are a few more running quarterbacks on the schedule that do. I think that do still worry me a bit till I see some improvement there. And look, that kind of goes to one of the points that I was going to bring up too. Now, of course, Missouri, what we saw last night versus Georgia, taking Georgia to the brink in a lot of ways, probably coulda, shoulda, woulda won that game versus Georgia. But we were all talking in the Discord like, hey, if Missouri doesn't score a touchdown, they're not winning this game. They kept having to settle for field goals there. But man, their defensive front really, jumped off the page when you start looking at how they played versus Georgia. But Missouri was awful the week before versus Auburn. They should have won that game. Auburn somehow wins that game, but Missouri, kind of coming off of a bad performance versus Auburn, plays about as good as they could versus Georgia, comes up just a bit short. So you do wonder now where Florida gets this kind of easy game. I don't think there was much game planning. I think that kind of goes to the defense at the same time. I don't really think there was a whole lot of game planning, more in-game adjustments versus Eastern Washington. Maybe I don't want to necessarily say look ahead to Missouri, but in some ways it probably was. But Florida now, Missouri coming up. Missouri coming. Is it going to be a hangover for Missouri? Do they use that as a confidence booster? We know the history Missouri has shown versus Florida since they've come into the SEC. I mean, I do wonder where this Missouri team is at. They could use that as kind of a rallying point versus Georgia, or they could just have this massive hangover. But either way, that defensive front is something I think after a lot of us watched that Georgia game, something saying, all right, Florida might have their hands full up front versus Missouri front.
Well, I hope we get the Missouri team that played against Kansas State.
Yes, yeah, that too. That's the thing. They had shown nothing whatsoever this season to go out there and play like that versus Georgia.
Yeah, that was they were so bad against Auburn. But then again, you watch what Auburn did to LSU. Maybe Auburn just takes everybody down to their level.
Get off to a fast start. It was 17-0 Auburn, and they ended
17-0.
Yeah, and they didn't score
21 unanswered
Right,
points.
they didn't score again, right? Yeah, and lose that game. So that was a crazy game toward the end. I was sitting there watching both on a couple screens, watching Auburn and LSU, which kind of always seems to have some drama, that series, and watching Georgia and Missouri at the same time. There was some good football on yesterday. I was kind of glad in a way. I said, I came on here saying I wasn't crazy about this Sunday game, but definitely got to watch a lot of dramatic football, especially in the SEC, while Florida, was pushing their game to Sunday.
Yeah, what was it? It's like, Mississippi State.
Yeah.
No, it was Auburn. Mississippi State versus
Mississippi State.
Oh, they played.
Mississippi State crushed A&M.
Right, that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed watching that. The Ole Miss. I mean, man, that was an exciting game as well. There was quite a few.
Oh yeah, the Kentucky game that Kentucky probably should have won.
Yeah,
I mean,
you say that, but I'm like, should they? I honestly don't.
I always say that, but
yeah,
I always say that. Not even really the end of the game. And look, I know we can say this for a lot of games. What if this had happened? But it was late enough in the game. If they get that, where they tripped themselves on that kickoff return, where it was a touchdown for Kentucky, and his teammate trips him. They take the lead right there. It's not like Ole Miss was really doing much on offense at that time. So, that was a physical game. I think we knew Kentucky was physical, but Ole Miss ended up playing physical for a good bit of that game at the same time.
Yeah, they came out obviously really ripping it, and then got a little bottled up. But it was an exciting one. But yeah, I just remembered. You said something in the Discord when you were watching Mississippi State. Tammy was driving on them. They were just giving off the ball to, I think his name is Aiken. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And he went, they found how to run the ball. And then I think he fumbled like the second after he said that and went, and they turned it over.
One of my favorite things from that Mississippi State Texas A&M game was the quote from Mike Leach afterwards when they were interviewing him. They said, "Why have you had so much success versus Texas A&M?" Says this quote, "I'm not really sure. I've not really had much to do. They always line up in the 3-man front and always give away what they're going to do. So truthfully, they just handed it to me time and time again."
Oh,
that's brutal.
That is. Oh. I mean, that should hurt worse more than anything Saban said to Jimbo, hearing that.
Yeah, we get that this weekend. Saban and Jimbo. So it looks like Jalen Kitna was talking to the media today. He said it felt good, obviously being there, being prepared for my team. I have a job to do. And said his touchdown pass to Caleb Douglas was a first read throw. Said he knew he'd have Douglas in one-on-one man coverage deep. So there you go. Knowing the offense. Reading a defense.
By the way, Alabama's a 23.5-point favorite over Texas A&M.
Ooh.
Ouch.
And that's what probably Young being somewhat questionable.
Right. I was going to say, are they factoring that in on that line? Wonder. It's weird to even talking about it with Bama. Like, you're like, okay, Bryce Young, your Heisman winning quarterback, is going to sit for a game. Boo-hoo. Like, what is your backup? I mean, you've been recruiting forever. So, it's weird being giving Bama any sort of sympathy for roster problems. But it still happens. It shows you. It matters, who's out there.
Let's see. Napier, we played clean offensively in particular. When we watch the tape, we'll see a little bit more. Napier said today was about maturity and execution, and he thought his team did well in both categories. Napier said Kitna had a 100% completion rate in practice 2 weeks ago and has made a lot of progress within the team's offense. He was very pleased with Kitna's effort. Said the defense could have done some things better throughout Sunday's game, but felt the unit improved after going through Eastern Washington scripted drives. There we go. Another one of my fallbacks. Game really starts after their opening drive. So after these scripted drives, that's when, what adjustments do you make after that? It goes a long way in football. So,
when do you feel that the script they went off script? Was it just after the first? Because it went pretty fast. So they might have bled over into the second.
Yeah, he did say getting through Eastern Washington scripted drive. So yeah, probably the first couple drives there.
Maybe the delay of game was an indicator of when they went off script.
Maybe so.
I think. Am I not? I could be mistaken here, but I know Jake Slaughter was in the game, and he had at least he was the first I saw him on the field. So I think he was at center for that one, and maybe that was part of it too. Does that sound right to you?
I don't. Yeah, I wouldn't looking that close.
I know he was on the field, and I think wasn't he penned in as a potential center? I know they moved him around a lot, so I'm not. Okay.
Yeah, but he was more talking about Florida's defense, their unit improving after Eastern Washington scripted drives.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I misheard that.
But that is a thing I look for. What happens after the first drives for both teams? That's usually where of course, if a team wins by a touchdown or so, you always go back to not wanting to give up just because it was scripted. I do think. I get tired of they put some stuff on tape we haven't seen before. Well, okay. Well, I get that, but shouldn't every team do that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I get the put stuff on tape. Also, play really conservative to keep the playbook tight so other people don't see stuff. All those things are always a little like, is that a real thing or not? I honestly don't know.
At this point in the year, I think the opposite is better. Put as much out there as possible so the other team has to practice for everything.
Well, I think that's what
that makes a lot more sense to me.
I think that's what happened with the Pearsall sweep. I mean, I think a lot of people say, well, why do you show that now? I mean, there are two ways to look at it. You put it on tape now. Teams have to prepare for it, have to account for him taking that sweep instead of Xavier Henderson. But also, I do get why don't you keep that under wraps until you need it, until a team can't prepare for it. So there are different ways to look at it.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know what's more legitimate way.
I don't either. That's just I'm just putting both scenarios out there. I don't know either, and I think that's probably a coaching preference thing.
Yeah.
So speaking of Henderson, I guess he's going to be the punt returner come hell or high water.
Yeah, they took him off a kickoff return, but out there for punt return. I don't know. Maybe this muff today will change, but I think he was out there afterwards as well. So
he got run down by an Eastern Washington defender. I'm sorry, but I'm like, that's just not. Sometimes you see a guy run, you can't tell how fast he's going.
Yeah.
Well, no, he got run down by an Eastern Washington defender.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is there. I mean, you go back to recruiting profile and you go to team speeds and stuff. He's supposed to be fast. He just is not fast in pads, not football fast. Takes forever to get up going. I don't know. They trust him for whatever. That's just two staffs in a row that trust him doing that job. So. But we'll see what happens. I do want to go back. I want to look at a lot of the younger players. Kamari Wilson getting a whole lot of playing time. He does seem more aggressive. I should say that's probably something else about this defense that I haven't been too crazy about. I don't know if that's a confidence thing or not. It's just we talked about up front, winning up front and that being an issue, but it just seems like and I think Napier mentioned it too. Now that I'm talking about it, where's the game tackling? Where's the pursuit? It just seems they're a tick slow. There's just not a lot of attacking in this defense.
Right, that was one thing that the Gators were known for in the past. That there would be six guys around the ball.
Yeah.
As opposed to a guy sticking his arm out. Ole.
Yeah, there is a lot of you play your position, particularly close to the line, outside linebackers and whatnot. The play runs by you, and then they kind of just all right, we're good.
They let the play come to them too much.
Yeah,
and that was one thing I did like about seeing DeJuan Black. I mean, there was one, he filled the hole. He came in and took on a tackler, or him being a tackler there. So that is just something I have noticed in this defense. They let the play come to them too much instead of going and attacking it.
I did think Wilson was playing like one of the things particularly, like Dean has a number of deficits. Obviously, he plays himself out of everything pretty regularly. He does come in and get tackles. Obviously, his numbers indicate that. But Wilson, I think, was a bit smarter on like who he was actually covering. And there was one play in particular, I think it was their tight end, where what was his name? Tackleton, I think, is a quarterback. Tackleton. He threw the ball, and Wilson was in really tight coverage with a guy that was much larger than him. But he actually threw the ball behind the play, so it was a weird thing where the tight end had to turn around and catch the ball, and Wilson was like, now the ball was between the tight end and him, and he still, he was wrestling for it, and he had his hand on the ball trying to pop it the whole way down, and he couldn't quite do it in that case. But
that was a crazy catch.
You remember that one?
Yeah,
okay, good. Yeah, that was a good one. I thought that was a real good show for him, even though, he didn't get it in that case. It still shows what he's capable of, I feel.
All right. Anything else, guys, before we sign off here on this episode?
Go Gators.
One thing before we go, because going back to my bookie.
Okay.
Gators open over 10. Minus 10 over Missouri.
10.
I know it's home.
Wow.
But that's a lot.
Wow. I wouldn't. Yeah. I was thinking probably off the top of my head around 6, maybe.
Right.
Ooh, 10. I think that might come down a little bit.
You gonna put money on that one?
Well, I'll never bet against Florida, but if I was nonpartisan, I would be taking Mizzou all day long.
If somebody's asking for advice,
I hate that. Yeah, I wish I could disagree. It's just going to be another boat race.
Yeah,
isn't it?
it's it might be it's coming off of Florida's first 4 games. How take this one, I'm not sure. However you want to take Eastern Washington game, but Florida's first 4 games, then I guess Missouri before the Georgia game. But I think that Georgia game is going to weigh heavy in a lot of people's minds. I think, and versus FBS opponents, Florida's been in all 1-score games. So,
but also, like you said, we don't know how it's going to deal. What is going to happen with Missouri? Are they emotionally spent? Because that happens, especially at the college level.
Oh, it happened, and close games happen in college football. It just, it just is what it is. I know a lot of people will probably take a look at Georgia and was it Kent State last week, and maybe not playing up to a certain level, and then the very next week doing the same thing versus Missouri. I do happen to think it was Georgia sleepwalking versus Kent State a week ago, but it doesn't look good, the week after that game to go play Missouri like this. And look, I called it. I put it on the Discord yesterday. I thought Georgia was going to have trouble. I had no evidence of that. I just had that feeling, and my feelings have been wrong plenty before. So I can't go too far with that. But that one I called a little bit for whatever reason. I thought Georgia would have some trouble versus Missouri. I don't know. I don't think Missouri is all that good. But I don't know where Florida is either. I do think that 10 points initial line coming out to that is a bit surprising. I didn't, even if I thought Florida could get 10, I didn't think a betting service out there would make it 10.
Well, let's we've been pooping on the Gators a little bit during this discussion, but let's give them credit where credit's due. Florida's played 5 games. 3 of those teams have either been top 10 at the time we played them or before or after.
Yep.
So we've really played a tough schedule.
Yeah, nobody's played a tougher schedule so far. So you hope that pays off. And it does skew stats a bit. It does skew the records a bit. It's still, the early portion of the season, we're starting to get more SEC play starting to ramp up a little bit more. We're starting to get even more knowledge about these teams and where they're at. But nobody's played a harder schedule than Florida so far. You hope that pays off down the road.
Yep. I hope so. With all the stuff that coach is having to deal with to come in and be staring down that schedule, it must have been something else.
It may be even tougher than what we originally thought. Utah is still a really good team, by the way. So still a really good win for Florida. Kentucky is still about where I thought. I wasn't very high on Kentucky coming in. They're about where I thought they would be. I thought Florida would be a little bit better. That's where that is. Kentucky is about what I thought they would be. Florida's not quite as good. Tennessee, probably a little bit better than what I thought they would be, but I did have them better than Kentucky. That holds true in my mind still. But we'll still get to learn more about these teams as we go forward. But, yeah, very tough schedule for Florida. You hope one that pays off.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And when people talk about rivalries, I know there's all different takes on it. And Tennessee is one that's getting lower and lower as a consensus. But for me, they're high up there. I really, really dislike Tennessee. But I got to hand it to them. I think they beat us. Whereas as far as Kentucky, it's more of, in my mind, we beat ourselves in that game. So we'll see how the trend goes going forward. But, I'm trying to be positive, optimistic we saw a lot of good stuff today. Yep. It was a fun game to watch when the offense was on the field.
Right.
And I'll take that away from it. I'm definitely going to rewatch it. I want to pay more attention in the second half, actually, to like all the different younger guys that were on there and get some real stuff out there.
Yep. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. I'm definitely looking forward to more discussion on it.
Absolutely. We'll do it in the Discord all week. This is Gators Breakdown Plus chat here for this game review initial reaction episode to Florida's 52-17 victory over Eastern Washington. So, guys, thank you so much for hopping here on the chat. And
thanks, Dave.
Yep. Thanks, guys, so
Thank
much.
you, Dave.
Thanks for being Gators Breakdown Plus members. Everybody, there's a link in the description if you want to join in as well. We have those chats. There's text chat going on in there as well. If you don't feel like having voice chats, we still have the traditional chat going on along the way at the same time. So, all right, that'll do it for this episode of Gators Breakdown. I am your host, David Waters. You can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. Guys and girls out there, thank you for listening to this episode of Gators Breakdown.